I woke up this morning and my voice is just a little lower than normal, and it's hard for me to sing up there where I need to, so I apologize for the lows. To Canaan's land I'm on my way, where the soul never dies. My darkest night will turn to day, where the soul never dies. No sand, no well, no tear dim eyes, where all is well, and the soul never dies. I'm on my way to that fair land where the soul never dies, where there will be no parting end, and the soul never dies. No sand, no sand, no tear dim eyes, where all is joy, and the soul never dies.
Scripture reading this morning is taken from Joshua chapter 24, verse 15. Joshua 24 and verse 15. I'll be reading out of the New International Version. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your forefathers served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord.
Good morning, church.
Good morning.
It's good to see everyone. My early preacher count tells me that we have somewhere in the realm of 32 here this morning. So that is a new COVID record. 35? 35 is the more accurate term, so I like that even better. Usually the preacher counts are higher. So that's good news. Good news. It's good to see more feeling comfortable to be able to be back with this, but obviously, as usual, we do appreciate everyone practicing some of the safety measures that we are wanting to continue to have in place. Again, I always want to say, I know it's not easy, but how blessed still are we to be able to come together without threat and without worry of outside forces keeping us from worship. Some places still have to deal with that, and we don't. So we can be blessed in that, but I also want to say hello to everyone that is still worshiping at home or wherever you may be. By the way, I did see a while ago that Carrie Blessinger was watching us on Facebook. So hopefully he'll be able to stick with us the whole time. You know, you never know about hospital internet. But we are so thankful that he has come as far as he has just in the last few days. I know that was a very scary situation. I also want to give a special shout out to Dan and Debbie Bean. They have just done a phenomenal job, I know, at least with my family. For Mother's Day and for Father's Day, they've sent our kids little kits about 2 weeks in advance with a coloring sheet and then a place where they could draw a picture of them with mom or dad and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, that's one of the best Father's Day gifts that you can get. So both of my kids did that, by the way. I want to let them know that. So thankful for that. And happy Father's Day to all of you who are fathers. But just like I say with Mother's Day, this isn't just a day, I believe, for biological fathers. This is also a day for anyone, for any man that has been a father figure or, a mentor, a male mentor to other children. I'm talking to you as well, because we most certainly need more male mentors in this world. I think we can kind of see, just as we look at some of the things that are happening in our world today, some of the things that are happening in our society. Well, I know that there's probably some of you dads out there that said, boy, if I saw my kid do that, I'd whip the fire out of him, wouldn't you? Because you know that there's a certain way that you taught your children to act and behave. And so that means a lot to you whenever you see other kids not doing those things. But I want us to think about this just for a moment as far as our introduction is concerned. If kids have a mommy, do they really need a daddy? Do they really need a father in their life, a father in their house, if they have a mom? We have a lot of households in this country right now that are single-parent homes. Most of those homes are mothers only. And there are some out there that might think that, well, there's no need for a father. We don't need a man in the house. We don't need to have a male figure. I as a mother, I can handle conversations with my son, with my daughter. I can handle everything that needs to be taught. Well, here's the thing. Statistics tell us otherwise. Now, I'm going to be using some statistics from 2016 because I think, when statistics are a few years out, that they're a lot more prone to be accurate. Time has been given in order to be able to make sure that all of the statistics are from the right sources and everything has come together accurately. So that's what I'm going to be doing, is looking at some 2016 statistics. According to the NEE Casey Foundation website, National Kids Count, approximately 35% of children under the age of 18 live in a single-parent home. As many as 25% of children in the U.S. live in households with a mother alone. That is over 18 million children who do not live with a father figure in their life. Additionally, father-only households were noted at just 8%. Now, I know that those are just informative figures just telling us the dynamics of many of the homes in the United States. This doesn't really show a problem, does it? It just kind of shows where we're at as far as our single-parent home situation. 25%. 1/4 of households in America only have one parent in that household. Boy, that's got to be a huge difference, most likely, than about 50 years ago, doesn't it? And before then. The more we go back in time, the more we see that figure lower and lower, because it was just a normal thing to have a mother and a father in the home. It was a normal thing that a majority of marriages would not break up. It was a normal thing that when two decided to live with one another, that they were going to be married, that they were going to be committed in that way to one another. And those homes, predominantly speaking, would not break up. Because a well-built home, because a family dynamic where there is a mother and father and children, was ideal. It was what people wanted. And it was what people would fight for in order to keep intact. Well, let's take a look real quickly at why this is a problem. Why is it a problem that we have so many single-parent homes? So let's look at some other statistics. These are statistics from the U.S. Department of Justice of the fatherless, again, 2016. Suicide. Let's take a look at suicide for just a second. 63% of youth suicides come from children that grow up in single-parent homes. Runaways. 90% of all homeless and runaway youths also come from single-parent homes. Behavioral disorders. 85% of all children that exhibit behavioral disorders come from single-parent homes. High school dropouts. 71% of all high school dropouts come from single-parent homes. Juvenile detention rates. 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions come from single-parent homes. Substance abuse. 75% of adolescent patients in substance abuse centers, you could probably finish this sentence, come from single-parent homes. Lastly, aggression. 75% of rapists are usually motivated by displaced anger coming from a home that does not have a good father figure or a father figure at all. What did we notice about every single one of these statistics? Look at how skewed they are to a majority of those who are in single parent. The statistic is that a majority of the ones that are involved in any of these, a large majority, come from single parent homes. And as we saw a while ago, a large majority of single parent homes are where there are mothers only. Now, does that mean that mothers are not valuable? Does that mean that mothers are not doing a good job? No, that's not what that means at all. You know, several weeks ago we praised our mothers and how wonderful they are and how great of an influence they are in our lives. But I think what this statistic or these statistics tell us is that while the influence of a mother, the love of a mother is a great thing, it is not all that a child needs, is it? A child needs love, nurture, and teaching from fathers just as much as mothers. And you want to know why things seem to be worse in our country? You want to know why the crime rate has jumped? You want to know why abortion rates are out of this world? Y'all, it starts with teaching young men to be fathers who will stick around. It starts with teaching young men to not abandon their families. And of course, it starts with teaching men and women the value and the sanctity of marriage and the commitment that is to keep the glue stuck together for these families. Moms and dads, both of you being in the life of your child is of the utmost importance. And of course, this morning as we talk about fathers, your children need you. Now, I'm mainly preaching to the choir here in the sense that pretty well everybody I know in this congregation, I see you as a good father, and I love to see what you are doing with your children. So maybe this is just kind of a checklist just to see if there are things that we could do better. I know that At any point, we as fathers, we could do better. I as a father, I could do better. And I readily admit that. But let's take a look at what fathers need to be. I titled the lesson this morning, Fathers, the True Navigators. Because isn't that what fathers really should be doing in the life of our family? Being the navigators, steering our families in the right direction, both in life and in the relationship that our wives and our children are going to have with God. We have the map. We have the directions. And we are to be the leaders in helping follow those directions. Maybe it's a bad example because we always talk about how men hate following directions, right? We always end up getting ourselves lost on the highway and having to look at the map. I know, several years ago, that's basically what you had to do is guys would think, oh, I know where I'm going, because we would look at markers. We'd look at specific markers on the road. Then we'd end up getting lost. Then we'd have to pull out our paper map. Well, now all we got to do is pull up our GPS on our phone. So we have a pretty easy cop-out now, don't we? We have a pretty easy way to fix the issue. And we have a pretty easy way to avoid the issue all the same. But nonetheless, fathers, we need to be trained navigators for our family. We need to be the ones that plot out the direction that our family goes. And by the way, our actions do plot out the direction that our families will go in. So I want to take a look at a few things this morning that can help us be better navigators, or can show us what the Bible says that we should be in that particular realm. And the first thing I want us to understand is that a navigating father understands his role to lead. He understands his role to lead. He understands that he has a responsibility to lead the rest of his family. Maybe some of you wives have heard this before and you don't really like this phrase, but yes, the father, the husband, is supposed to be the king of the castle. Now, you might look at that phrase and you might think, oh, well, you're saying that a man is in charge and whatever he says goes and everybody else is just a slave under him. No, that is not what I'm saying at all. If you think that's the route I'm going in, then you do not understand the true biblical concept of nation leading. Because all through the Bible, you see great wisdom given to kings. It doesn't mean they always follow that wisdom. Solomon was the best example of having a lot of knowledge and wisdom throughout his life, but then later in his life he kind of forgot a lot of that wisdom. You look at the example of King Lemuel, which we talked a little bit about in our Wednesday night Bible class, about the instructions that his mother would give him about being a good leader in and of himself, about how to lead a nation, and the responsibility that was. Kings have always had a great responsibility. So when I say king of the castle, I mean men, I mean dads, I mean husbands. We've got a great responsibility to lead our little mini nation in the right direction. We have a great responsibility to protect the ones that we love in our own little kingdom there. But he's king of the castle. 1 Corinthians 11 and verse 3 kind of shows us this, but I want to take a look at the order of leadership here within this passage. Look at verse 3. It says, but I want you to understand. Now, first, take a look at what Paul is telling the Corinthians here. The very first thing he says in that verse, I want you to understand. So what does that mean? Sit back and listen for a minute. Just sit back and listen. Don't get defensive. Don't try to say something isn't your fault, or don't try to say, oh, that's what I do. He said, just sit back and listen. I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ. The head of a wife is her husband. The head of Christ is God. Yes, I know that it says that the head of every woman or the head of every wife is her husband. What was the first thing that it said there? The head of every husband is Christ. Men, we have a great responsibility as being heads of our households to make sure that Christ is our head. And if Christ is our head, that means that we do not shirk the responsibilities given to us as husbands and as daddies. That we have this great responsibility of influence. And that influence needs to completely be under Christ. I want to take another example here of an Old Testament dad. Now, I understand that he wasn't a king, more priest here, but I want to look at Eli. Eli in the book of 1 Samuel was guilty of neglect, I believe, with his sons. Whenever you look at 1 Samuel 4 and verse 18, it would appear, at least to me, that Eli was so preoccupied with his work, he didn't have time for anything else. And then in the midst of all of this, folks, of course I know this is mentioned later on, but in the midst of all of this, it's like he's surprised when his sons deviate from the truth. It's like he's surprised when his sons don't follow God. And here's the interesting thing about it. Take a look at 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 23 through 24. I believe this verse kind of gives a clue into how involved Eli was or was not involved in the lives of his sons. It says this. He said to them, "Why do you do such things? Why do you worship idols? Why do you go toward the heathens? Why are you living like this? Why do you do such things?" Here's what he says next. "For I hear of your evil dealings from all these people. No, my sons, it is no good report that I hear the people of the Lord spreading abroad." Where was Eli getting all his information about his sons? From other people, wasn't it? From other people. That kind of helps to tell me that he didn't really know his sons. He wasn't necessarily involved in the lives of his sons like he should have been. Now, you can look at this and you say, well, but Eli reprimanded him. He got onto them for what they were doing. But he did so, I believe, in a way that was very, very distant to his sons. You can tell that he did not have an influential grasp on their lives. How do I know that? Because I believe that God recognizes that. 1 Samuel 3 and verse 13. "And I declare to him," that is Eli, "that I am about to punish his house forever for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God. He did not restrain them." He says, Eli, you knew. You knew that there was something going on. You knew there was something that you could stop. But you didn't. You didn't restrain your sons. You didn't influence your sons. You didn't teach your sons in the right way. Fathers, do not neglect your charge. And the first way that you can make sure you don't neglect that charge is that you are involved in the lives of your children. I understand that in a lot of households that the husband or that the father is the main breadwinner. You may spend countless hours at work. You may come home and you're absolutely exhausted, and the first thing that you want to do is get in your recliner and you just want to take a nap. You want to rest. But you don't want to be bothered the rest of the night. You just want to go home and you want to watch that ball game or watch your favorite show or You want to go out in the garage and you want to work on something by yourself. Well, don't forget all of that time that you spend by yourself. I'm not saying that you should never have time alone. I think we all need that. But don't forget that all that time that you spend alone, all that time you spend by yourself, is time spent away from influencing your kids. Time is precious. Time is valuable. And our kids need that time. And I'm just as guilty as any one of you. I can't stand up here and tell you that my kids have never said, Daddy, can you put that down? Can you turn the TV off? Can we go do this? Can we go do that? I saw a great example of this several weeks ago. You know, during all this COVID-19 stuff, a lot of our sporting events have been put on hold, right? Well, I thought it was really cool because NASCAR came up with some pretty innovative ways to continue the sport. They started making NASCAR-sanctioned events through some online software called iRacing. And that means that these NASCAR drivers could sit in their homes in a racing simulator and could still race against one another. Now, the only difference is that they weren't really going 200 miles an hour in a really powerful machine on a racetrack. They were just in their living rooms. Well, one of the drivers, actually the driver that won the Daytona 500 this year, he was participating in one of these races. This was broadcast live on Fox Sports 1. And on Fox Sports 1, all of a sudden his car disappears off the track. Later it was found out that while he was driving in this race, his daughter had walked up to him and said, Daddy, will you go ride go-karts with me and then her little sister? Will you go with us? Not right now, honey, I'm racing. And, you know, there wasn't necessarily money involved in this, a money purse or prize other than sponsors and all that. So she just takes the remote to the simulator television, she turns it off. That's why his car disappeared in the middle of this race. On national television. And of course, there's video of him. He got angry. At first he was like, what's going on? What just happened? And then she kind of runs off, you know, with this guilty face. But ultimately, when he was interviewed later, he was like, you know what? That was just a daughter that was wanting time with her dad. And he said, I can be mad about when that happened, but ultimately, my daughter wanted time with her dad. And I think he saw the value of it. Now, for the next weekend, the next race, he hid all the remotes all over the house. He hid them all so that she couldn't do that. But what a powerful story from both directions there, from the daughter and from the father, signaling, Dad, I need time with you. I need your attention for just a minute, for just a moment. And fathers, we need to give our kids that attention. Secondly, our second point this morning is that a navigating father guides his children or guides through selflessness. Where should our kids learn how to be selfless? Shouldn't it be from mom and dad? Shouldn't it be through what our kids see in us and see us do day in and day out in our lives? Here's the interesting thing that I want to bring up is that even Jesus pointed out whenever he was trying to reason with some unreasonable people, even Jesus pointed out, you know, even evil men, even evil people, evil fathers, for the most part, will put their kids first in some ways. You know, you think about it, you think about some of the most evil and some of the worst people in the world right now, some of the worst dictators in the world. Would you ever doubt that they love their own kids? No. I wouldn't. But look at what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 7, verses 9 through 10. Now, what I'm about to show you is not like a law-abiding principle here, but it's Jesus saying, hey, look, here is where you at least need to start. Here is where you at least need to have a starting point about thinking about your family. Verses 9 and 10 here he says, or which one of you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Now, obviously, that last part of the passage there in verse 10 was the principle that Jesus was trying to bring about. Your Father in heaven, the God above, my Father is a benevolent God. He gives to those who ask. He provides for us. And he said there's a model there. How much more does God give whenever you can even look at evil families, you can look at evil people, you can look at godless people, and you can still see within that family dynamic, you can still see a love and a care by many fathers. But how much more will God the Heavenly Father do that? And so again, we need to look at this as a starting point in understanding where at least we should start and then distinct ourselves as Christian fathers. If God can show us all the more love and selflessness and benevolence, and how much more should you and I toward our families, toward our children, toward giving of our time, toward, maybe thinking about, well, I was going to use this allowance to buy this brand new tool or something like that. But man, I really need to do this. Or I need to go here with my kids and spend some time with them. Those are the kind of decisions that I think that we ought to be grappling with as selfless fathers. So fathers should go further than the passage that we just read in showing others that they are more important than self. Take a look now at Matthew 20, verses 26 through 28, and we can see the selflessness of Christ. We see the selflessness of Christ here. And of course, as Christ shows selflessness, he models that, or he tries to give that as a model for you and me. And if we're going to be leaders of the home as fathers, then we need to be the most selfless in our families. He says, it shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. He's saying we need to be servants of others, really, just as Jesus did. Again, this was an instance where the disciples were arguing over who was greatest among them. He says, let me tell you which of you would be greatest. It would be those who are on the ground washing feet. It would be those who are putting others above yourself in daily life. It would be those who are acting as servants and not acting as royalty. If you think about it, who have been the greatest leaders in our world? It's been the ones who have gotten down and served. That hasn't been afraid to be among the regular people and to suffer with them if need be. And fathers, that's really where we need to be. Dads, you can't teach kids to follow Christ if Christ doesn't rule your life, and Christ's example doesn't rule your life, and Christ's selflessness isn't a part of your life. You can't teach kids that without doing it yourself. So navigating fathers, guide through selflessness. Thirdly, a navigating father leaves his kids a legacy. He leaves his kids a legacy. And the first thing I want us to understand here is that he builds a foundation for direction in life. He builds a foundation for direction in life. In Proverbs 13 and verse 22, you can look at this and automatically what you're going to do is you're going to look at the financial aspect of things, about financial security and all that. But I want you to broaden your minds just a little bit whenever you read this as well. I want you to broaden this not just to financially being okay for generations to come in your family, but what legacy are you teaching? What are the principles in daily life that you're teaching those? Some of my favorite things to think about are things that my dad taught me that his dad taught him. Things that have been passed down that have no boundary of time and culture, but things that are just as true today as they were 50, 60 years ago. And no doubt my grandfather's father taught him, and his father taught him some of those things. That's what part of the legacy is too. But Proverbs 13:22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. Okay? Let's leave a legacy, fathers, for our kids, both in the things, the daily principles, the daily responsibilities that we teach, along with providing that security for them and teaching them how to provide security for the ones that they love or will love in the future. So a father practices stewardship toward his children and for their lives here on earth. But he also builds a foundation for direction in faith. He directs his children in their faith. He tries to lead them down a particular road. Now, I know as well as you do, I'm not naive, that sometimes our kids don't follow that direction. Sometimes they don't go down that same road. But the principle here is, what direction are we at least trying and attempting to steer them into? And I think with that, if a father is going to give his children a foundation of faith, then he needs to be wearing the armor of God, the armor that we find in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 13 through 16. Do your children look at you as this great and mighty, not just physical warrior that's going to protect your home physically from intruders, but do they look at you as a mighty spiritual warrior? Do they look at you and they see this armor that you're ready to go into spiritual battle? That is the idea that Paul tries to give here with armor. That you are ready to face anything, any challenges, any spiritual threats. It says, therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. Stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one. I truly and honestly believe that a dad who wears spiritual armor will influence his kids to want to put on the same. And notice what it said there in the last part of the passage. In all circumstances. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith. That strong faith and that strong exhibited faith, that strong faith exhibited in front of your children, will extinguish flaming darts from Satan. And that's, in real life, I'd be scared enough of seeing some arrows flying at me and having to put a shield up. But flaming darts, wow, that's quite a threat. Paul is warning the Ephesians of the threat of Satan. But he said that shield of faith can withstand that. So keep it up and stand firm. A navigating father leaves his kids a legacy of faith. Conclusion this morning to all of our navigating or navigator dads. Thank you. Thank you for being the dad that you are. Thank you for being the influence that you are on your children, on your young people. Don't stop that. Thank you for steering us. And I'm talking to my father too. He's probably watching as their Bible class in Evansville right now. Thank you for steering us and holding us, facing us in the right spiritual direction. I thank all the dads that keep Joshua 24 verse 15, which was our scripture reading a while ago. I thank all of you who keep this as your motto as you raise and you influence children. And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods of your fathers, the gods of the past, the gods that your fathers served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Have you made that declaration? You know, I understand that your wife might have a sign that says this on it hanging up in your house. But have you made this declaration? Because guess what? Joshua, as a father, in Joshua 24:15, he is making this proclamation. He's making this declaration as a husband and a father. Me and my house, no matter what you do, no matter what the rest of this nation does, no matter what the rest of this church does,